the guys went about their work, how they pressed, how they disrupted Kansas's flow and build into the game in that first half was streets in front of where we were last weekend. The opportunities that we created as the game wore on. In truth, I felt as though we should have been in a better position than we were going into the last few minutes. But nevertheless, a come from behind victory, a very, very difficult stadium and venue against a good side that we know are going to be in and around the playoff shake-up. They consistently are in that postseason. And when you can come away and beat those teams, it certainly does an awful lot for the group's belief and spirit, which is already in a wonderful place.
Thank you, Coach. We'll now open the floor for questions. A reminder to the media to please alert me through by raising their hands if they have a question for Coach or any of the players who will be coming after him. With that, Tim Sullivan, please go ahead with the first question of the evening.
Gary, you mentioned that you felt like you probably should have been in slightly better position going into the final stages there, but even from the first half, you guys were kind of the protagonists of this game. What does it say about you guys that you were able to do that in a place that's notoriously difficult to play, and what allowed you to do that?
Well, look, you're absolutely right about this being a difficult venue. They play the field well, the fans get behind them. For anyone that's been here, you realise that the atmosphere is very, as I said before the game, very vociferous. The fans really get this group up. And it's not easy to try and control and manage periods of the game. I think what the guys did this week, that we'd had a brief look at to try and subtly shift one or two things from last week, to get ourselves slightly higher up the field. We needed to take one or two chances, which we did. There were one or two scary moments in the early exchanges. I know Russell had a good opportunity when he cut inside Taylor. And when you're trying to force the game, there's always going to be one or two of those moments where, you run the risk that the home team can take advantage. But I think in the main, the attitude of the players, the energy to attack the game, and then when we won the ball, there were some really good choices. We had some good passages of play. We didn't squander the ball too often. We didn't try and force the issue too quickly. We put ourselves in a good spot, and we asked them a lot of questions. And when you come away from home, which is what we're finding obviously week after week, if we can create and ask those creative questions on a reasonably consistent basis, it certainly affects the way that the home team go about their business.
Dre Hills with the Tennessean with the next question.
Gary, congrats on the win. First of all, this is a team that obviously has built some momentum in terms of getting the first goal and keeping the lead. But, this is a situation where you guys have come into Kansas City and obviously not only come back from that lead, but get a win. How do you feel about that performance, just not just from this season, but just taking a look at the past few years? What is this type of win, coming back from a goal down at Kansas City, say about you guys?
Well, the experiences that we're gathering over the course of this long, difficult run away from home are going to be invaluable for us as we move forward. And I think we have to go a little way back and say, we're in our third year. We're not a team that's got years of history and soccer to look at. We have 2 years of very decent play to look at, but we're still developing really and truly. So the experiences are great. They're invaluable. What we're finding on the road is that, of course, the attitude, the unity within the group is vital to either stay in games or to compete with some very good home teams. But I think when you look at today's performance, there's a real there's a real belief and a fibre within the group that is consistently growing game on game now. And when you look back at the performances across these 6 games already away from home, really it's only the Dallas game that we could say that we underperformed, certainly to the standards that we have set. There's been some great individual displays. We've played a couple of different shapes. There's been, some true heroic performances when needed. There's been a great understanding in the group when also needed. Some of the guys that did a fantastic job last week were out there again and were given the chance to try and put back-to-back games together in a very strong group. And they've done exactly that. So there's a lot that we can draw on. If you ask me, are we where we want to be? I would say no. I think there's more to come from the group. I think there's other dimensions to the group. But what we are seeing is a team that is gaining tremendous understanding, rhythm, and confidence out of some really, really tough road games.
Thank you, Coach. We'll continue with Ben Wright, followed by Tim Sullivan and Ray Hills with follow-up questions.
Yeah, Gary, this felt like one of the more open games you've played this season. Was that by design heading into the game, or was that just kind of how things played out?
No, like I just said in it, I think it was the last question that was asked, and maybe the one before from Drake. There were some subtle shifts from last week. Last week, we absorbed a lot of pressure, did a wonderful job, and of course, the 3 points were terrific. But we certainly have better qualities, other dimensions to us than what we saw just last week. But when you try and take the game, i.e. when you pressurize teams, especially away from home, there are going to be situations where that doesn't work and you leave yourself short at the back. But I think we all felt that, this game, after last week's victory and the confidence that we gained from that, this game was one that I felt we could just turn the screw a little bit more. And it worked. Look, I'm not saying every week it will be that way. I'm not saying every week that we'll perform in this manner. But today, the way the guys went about their business against this team in this environment, it worked. So therefore, we can look back on this footage and we can draw on this. And when we need to turn the screw again, then we've got not only got the tools, but we've got the confidence from this performance.
Tim, go ahead.
Going back to the first half again, Gary. Obviously, Hani has a penalty saved. You guys have a ball in the back of the net correctly called back for an offside call. How do you feel at that time, knowing that you've squandered a couple of opportunities, and again that this is not an easy place to generate tons and tons of opportunities in the first place?
Look, if you're asking me to be brutally honest, going in 1-0 down, having missed a penalty, playing here, I was feeling somewhat frustrated and disappointed, as you can imagine. But the difficulty is when you try and evaluate the performance itself, you're looking at two very different pictures, and sometimes the score line, either at the break or at certain stages of the game, can, it doesn't necessarily reflect the way the game's unfolding. And I think that the guys at halftime did a wonderful job of maintaining a very positive outlook, belief, and confidence in what we had achieved. The halftime scoreline was not what we wanted or felt that we necessarily deserved to be on the end of. And you're right, when you miss a penalty away from home, it can be quite a bit deflating. But if you look at Hani's performance, I would say that he shook that off. In fact, he dug in even deeper and performed to a wonderful level. and of course was instrumental in the result. But there is no doubt when you go down away from home, there's a lot of emotional qualities that you've got to bring to the fore, and the guys have shown some incredibly heroic, emotions and qualities to turn this game around.
Drake.
Gary, I know that. Look, I mean, you still got a couple of more road games left, but does the way that you guys, in the manner that you guys have won last weekend and this weekend, does that change how you guys feel and how you feel about the way you guys are approaching this road test, and the way you guys are obviously gunning towards a certain place in the standings, and being in a certain situation going into May 1st?
Well, not really. There were some boxes that we wanted to tick. The way we're playing, the confidence within the group was certainly one of them. We had to try and keep in a good place. Returning home and having a lot of home games. I think we've shown a good edge to our performances. But overall, the attitude and the way that we've compartmentalized each game, each challenge, each travel day, each travel weekend, whether they're 2, 3, 4 days, whether they're 1 hour, 2 hour time zones, it is new to all of us, or most of us. But I think we've got a pretty good grip of where we're at, what we need to do, and how we take the good parts along to the next game, and we try and dismiss some of the difficulties that we have encountered, and we've encountered many of them, and they're not just on the field. A lot of people don't understand or realise some of the difficulties in travel, and what times we've turned up, or flights that have been delayed, and so on. And every team has to deal with that, and we're no different. But when you get in those problems back to back, it can become a serious challenge. But I will say this: the day that we believe that we've achieved what we want will be the day that we start to falter, and we'll achieve nothing. The result today is a very, very good one. It will mean nothing when we go into the game next weekend, other than the confidence that we have moving into it. We still have to perform. We still have to prove to a San Jose team that we've never faced before that we're a decent team. And if we don't do that, we'll lose the game. Simple as that.
But tell us how the play happened, and then tell us how you were able to hang in and get that 2-1 result in the end.
We work on set pieces pretty often in the day before and 2 days before games, just kind of what a weakness of their setup is and stuff like that. And so one of the plays was for Honey to play short, and then once we knew that, we just needed to drift to the far post, and Randall couldn't have played a better ball. It just landed straight on my head, and all I had to do was just not screw it up, and thankfully I didn't. Honestly.
Thank you. Team, take the podium.
Obviously, you played an important role in the second goal as well. I know you guys have gone with the Dave Romney long throw in past occasions, and that hasn't necessarily worked out. Is it like vindicating to see it result in a goal tonight?
Yeah, it was kind of a broken play. I mean, we had the first one we had this year, I think in Dallas. Hani scored on one that ended up getting called offsides, even though it actually wasn't. So that was like kind of indication. And then we had one last year in Toronto with Castellanos, with Robert getting one. He scored on one last year. So it's better than 0 goals, I guess. I mean, we've had some pretty dangerous counterattacks off of our own throw-ins, so I've been kind of nervous about that. But yeah, just any way we can just kind of create chaos. I mean, it's not like we're playing beautiful soccer when I'm going up there to throw the ball in, but sometimes you get lucky, and that's happened against us, sometimes on set pieces, and sometimes we get lucky. So tonight it was nice to kind of score on 2 set pieces. We created a bunch of other chances we weren't as fortunate enough to score on, but I think we actually kept possession pretty well, created a lot of chances. Our attacking trio did really well. And we just happened to score on 2 set pieces, but I think they did really well, and they created a lot of chances, and definitely felt a little bit more balanced than Columbus was last week. And we kind of knew that going into half. We were pretty confident, even though we were down 1-0, that we could come back in the game and get a win. So it was just nice to actually do that.
Thank you, Dave. Claudio?
Thank you, Christina. Dave, we probably think that your goal was a long time deserved and coming, because it usually seems that like for somehow or another, Walker's right there in front of you and scores. But is that how you felt all this time? Because it didn't seem like you've been there before and the goal just didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, usually I'm setting a pick for him or something, but that play just kind of broke down once we went short, and it was just kind of get to the back post and right place, right time. Brando played an absolute dime, and I was just in the right spot, and all I had to do was just finish it. I had a couple headers last year off the post, off the crossbar, and just wasn't really going my way, but I'm honestly just more happy that we won, picking up 3 points. We got to go on to San Jose and get another 3 points. Yeah, I think we're in a really good spot in these first 8 road games. For us to currently have a winning record after 6 straight road games is solid. We just need to keep doing that, and we're going to have a tough home game against Philadelphia. Are they still undefeated? Do they win today, I think? Yeah, so that's going to be a very tough home game. So we just need to carry as best a good of a record as we can going into that game. And then once we get on a nice streak of home games, hopefully we can keep climbing up the table.
Dave, you mentioned it in the previous answer, but you guys were fairly dominant at times in the run of play. What sort of, I guess, growth have you seen in the team that's allowed you from, obviously Columbus was not the most open end-to-end sort of game. This one you guys were able to create a ton of chances from the run of play. Is that a sign of growth? Is it just a sign of a different style of game that unfolded tonight, or what does it mean kind of in the big picture?
Yeah, I mean, just game to game basis, I think it's more to do with the team we were playing against and the style they were and what their strengths and weaknesses are. But we did find a little bit more composure, and we did find ourselves getting a little bit higher up the field at times, or being able to keep possession further in their half. There was a lot of times that we couldn't really keep the ball in the Columbus game in the second half, and we kind of just ended up hunkering in. Whereas this game, we would break out sometimes, and we would kind of just calm the ball down, and we would keep possession and get ourselves up the field. Some of that had to do with them not really pressing us too hard with their front three. They kind of just let us play around the back casually. So all those things kind of just played into our hand, I guess. And just, I mean, they hit the post twice. So it's just, some games break your way, some days they break against you. That's just what soccer football is.
Claudio, take us home.
Dave, besides all the traveling, which is tough, and besides the different fields and even weather in many of these places when you're being already, and then 2 more games to go, what is it that you might, maybe a couple of things that you could say has been the hardest part of the whole ordeal of traveling and playing away from home these many games?
I think the hardest part, the weather's actually been pretty good for us for the most part. We've had some cold games, but nothing too bad. Minnesota was probably the worst. But I think most guys would agree with me. We would take cold rather than 90 degrees and humid in Miami or something in the summer. So these games haven't been too bad. I think the toughest part about playing so many road games is if you get into a mindset of being really defensive and not really controlling all the games or not being so attacking, you can kind of fall into a shell of doing that, even though we know once we get ourselves at home for a stretch of games, we're going to be a lot more aggressive, a lot more attacking. So it was kind of just getting in the mindset of, hey, look, some of these games we play in, we're going to be very defensive, and just know that's not our identity. That's more of just the result of 8 straight games on the road and just trying to claw points on the road. And luckily we've gotten 2 wins in these last 2 games, but just not to get too down after Dallas or Salt Lake or games that didn't really go our way or were defensive, stuff like that. So that's probably the hardest part of just knowing being super defensive won't be our identity for the long run, but just we'll find ourselves in that scenario in some of these tough games on the road.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Dave, for tonight's time. Safe travels home.
Thank you. See you guys.